My mom looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Your job is done. Get out." That was the night I transferred $5,000 to pay for my sister's tuition, and the night I realized I no longer had a place in my own home. I'm Lena. I was the provider, the invisible backbone of the family, until they decided I was no longer useful. What they didn't expect, I wouldn't just walk away quietly. Have you ever given everything to your family, only to be pushed out the moment they no longer needed you? Tell me in the comments. What would you have done if your mother erased you, like a bill paid in full? By the time I pulled into the driveway, the rain had turned from a drizzle to a steady, bitter curtain. My wipers squeaked with each pass, and the dashboard clock blinked 9:47 p.m. I sat there a moment longer, watching the water trail down the windshield like slow tears. My left shoulder ached from hunching over spreadsheets all day, and my stomach grumbled I'd skipped lunch again to finalize Sophie's tuition transfer. $5,000. My entire emergency fund gone in one click. The porch light was on, flickering like it hadn't been changed in years. I took a breath, grabbed my work bag, and stepped out. My shoes soaked through instantly. I thought maybe, just maybe, there'd be leftovers in the fridge. A slice of last night's casserole, even a bagel. That hope was enough to keep me moving through the damp. Inside the house was unusually quiet. Not peaceful, just stale. The kind of silence where even your footsteps feel like a nuisance. From the living room, I could hear the low buzz of the television. My mother's voice floated out, bright and brittle. "You're home?" I rounded the corner. She was sitting on the recliner, wrapped in a knit blanket remote, balanced on her thigh. Rick was on the couch, barefoot, holding a can of beer. He didn't look at me. Neither of them did. "I just got off," I said, setting my bag by the wall. "Did anyone eat?" "There's something in the freezer," my mother replied, not turning from the screen. "Pizza rolls or something." I walked down the hall toward my room. The door was cracked open. I reached for the knob but froze. The room was empty. No bed, no bookshelf, not even the faded rug I bought from the thrift store when I was 23, just blank walls and a bare floor. The air felt hollow. My heart didn't race. It didn't even thump. It just sank. "I moved your stuff out," Mom said from the living room. "Rick and I need the space." I stepped back into the hallway. "You?" "What?" She turned her head slightly enough to glance at me over her shoulder. "We're turning it into our bedroom. Yours is in the garage now." "You didn't think to ask?" "I assumed you'd understand," she said, voice syrupy and smooth. "You don't live here anymore, really. You're always gone. You're working, making money. Adults live on their own." I felt a strange tightness behind my eyes, not quite tears. Just pressure. "So you just decided this today?" She looked back at the screen. "It's been coming for a while. Your job is done." The words didn't register at first, but they hit like a closing door, not slammed, just shut. Rick cracked open another beer. "The garage isn't that cold this time of year," he muttered. I didn't answer. I turned, walked down the back steps into the garage. It smelled like motor oil and damp cardboard. My boxes were stacked haphazardly, half of them open. A suitcase lay on its side. My winter coat was draped over a broken lawn chair. Near the tool shelf, I spotted a familiar-shaped Dad's old coffee mug, the one with the chipped rim that he used every Sunday morning while reading the paper. I picked it up. Still smelled faintly like cinnamon. I took a trash bag from the shelf, dropped in the mug my coat and a few random items I could carry. My laptop charger was tangled in a rake handle. I didn't bother untangling it. I just yanked until it came loose. Back upstairs, Mom didn't ask where I was going. She didn't look up. "I'll be out tonight," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "You're not mad, are you?" "We just thought—" "I'm not mad. I meant it. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel anything." Out on the porch, the wind had picked up. Rain soaked through my sleeves in seconds. I climbed into my car, started the engine, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My hair was wet, stringy. Mascara had smudged beneath my eyes. I looked older than 31. The dashboard glowed faint blue. The seat warmer clicked on. The world felt numb. Then my phone buzzed. "Sophie," I hesitated. My fingers hovered above the screen. Then I swiped to answer. Lena. You're not gonna believe this. Her voice was bright, bubbling with excitement. I just got the email full scholarship. I got it. I don't have to worry about next semester. My mouth opened. But no sound came. I clutched the phone tighter. That's great, I said barely above a whisper. You okay? She asked. You sound different. I pressed the cup of Dad's mug into my palm. Cold porcelain against colder fingers. Yeah, I said softly. I'm just driving. I'll call you later. The rain kept falling. The porch light flickered behind me. I didn't look back. The hum of the motel's fluorescent ceiling light made it hard to think. It flickered every so often, casting a jumpy shadow across the wall. I lay on the stiff mattress, still in my work pants, arms folded under my head. My shoes sat by the door, soaked and muddy. I hadn't even turned on the TV. The room smelled faintly of bleach and something metallic. The kind of smell that never lets you forget you're just passing through. Beside me on the nightstand sat a peanut butter granola bar dinner, if you could call it that. I'd found it crushed beneath a receipt pile in my glove compartment. Not expired, just dry, like everything else that night. I thought about sleeping, but I knew if I closed my eyes, I'd just replay her words. Your job is done, like I was never a daughter, just a role, a function. My phone buzzed. Sophie. I stared at the name for a second, thumb hovering. Then I answered. Lena. I couldn't wait, she said, breathless. I got it. The scholarship, full ride. Isn't that wild? I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. My chest tightened like my ribs forgot how to hold me together. That's amazing, I managed. Really? She paused. Are you okay? And for once I didn't pretend. No, I said, I'm not. The silence on the other end wasn't empty. It was full of realization of shift, like she'd heard something in my voice she'd never let herself hear before. What happened? I exhaled slowly. The ceiling fan spun in lazy circles. I'm not home anymore. Mom told me to leave. My stuff's in the garage. I'm at a motel. What she said, voice catching. Why would she and Rick are taking my room. Apparently I don't live there anymore. Sophie was quiet again. Then softer, I had no idea. I swallowed. I don't think she wanted you to. There was a rustling sound, maybe her shifting on her bed. Then she asked, Do you remember that park near the library with the old wooden swings? Of course, I said, blinking at the memory. You used to push me for what felt like hours, she said, her voice smaller. One day I fell and scraped my knee. I was screaming. But you didn't run to get Mom. You just held me and said, It's okay. I'm here. I'll always be here. I could almost feel the rough wood of that swing beneath my hand again, the way her little fingers would wrap around mine so tight when she was scared. I was just a kid, I said. I didn't know what else to do. Well? It meant everything she whispered. There was a pause. Then steady and sure she said, I don't want to stay in that house anymore. Not if it means pretending nothing's wrong. Let's leave it behind. I sat up, staring at the cheap curtains swaying from the heater vent. Are you sure you've been carrying everything alone, she said. I can help now. The sentence landed like something sacred, like someone had just gently shifted some of the weight off my shoulders. I pulled the scratchy motel towel from the edge of the bed and wrapped it around my damp arms. For the first time all day, I exhaled fully. I'll come get you tomorrow, I said. Her voice cracked just slightly. Okay. I'll be ready, we said goodbye. Not the kind that ends something, the kind that opens a door. After I hung up, I turned off the light. The ceiling fan kept spinning in the dark. I don't know how long I lay there. But eventually, I drifted into a dream. I was back at the park. The swing set was old and creaky, but still standing. I walked toward it, grass wet with morning dew. I reached out and pushed the swing gently. It moved. But there was no one sitting in it. The gravel crunched under the tires as I pulled into the driveway. The front porch light was still on, though it was well past sunrise. The wooden swing swayed slightly in the breeze, just enough to creak. Sophie shifted in the passenger seat, her overnight bag clutched to her chest. Neither of us had slept. The house looked smaller than I remembered. It had been 3 years since I last stood in front of it, summer 2019. Dad was still alive then. We'd all sat in lawn chairs in the backyard, drinking iced tea and swatting at mosquitoes. He laughed so hard at something Grandpa said he nearly choked. That memory felt 1,000 miles from the person I'd become since. I stepped up and knocked, not even knowing if they'd be awake yet. A moment passed. Then the door opened. Lena Grandpa's voice was gruff, confused, but warm. And Sophie. "Well, I'll be—" Before I could say a word, Grandma appeared behind him. "Oh, honey," she whispered, and then we were both wrapped in her arms. I hadn't heard my name sound that safe in years. We stepped inside. The air smelled like cinnamon oatmeal and a hint of rosewater, Grandma's favorite hand cream. The house hadn't changed. Same crocheted blankets on the couch, same wall of framed photos, same faint classical music drifting from the old radio in the corner. I spotted Dad in a photo from his 20s, standing in front of his first car. My throat tightened. "Come sit," Grandma said. "You two look frozen." We settled around the small kitchen table. Sophie sat beside me, eyes still puffy from the ride. Grandpa poured tea into mismatched mugs. The pancakes were already made, stacked neatly on a ceramic plate, with a drizzle of syrup melting down the sides. "You don't have to say anything yet," Grandma added, gently pushing the honey toward me. "But you can stay as long as you need." I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the quiet kindness of it all. After a while, we began to eat. Sophie picked at her food, and I sipped the tea, slowly letting its warmth sink in. Then Grandma glanced toward Grandpa, a question in her eyes. He cleared his throat. "Your mother told us you both gave up the inheritance after your father passed." I looked up. "What?" "She said you'd signed a waiver," Grandpa continued. "We didn't question it. Thought maybe you didn't want to be involved." Sophie blinked. "What waiver?" Grandpa stood, went to the hall closet, and returned with an old shoebox. Inside were papers, some faded, some folded neatly. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. "This is what she gave us, back in 2020. I slid the paper out and unfolded it. My hands felt clammy. Sophie leaned in, reading over my shoulder. The document was labeled Inheritance Waiver Agreement. It had both our names printed clearly at the top, and signatures, one under each name. But the handwriting wasn't mine, not even close. Flash. Dad's voice in my head. "Never sign anything you haven't read 3 times. I stared at the date. April 2020. I was working 12-hour shifts from home, then barely sleeping trying to keep us afloat. "No one had ever shown me this. I've never seen this before," I whispered. "Me either," Sophie said, her voice trembling. "That's not my signature. I mean, this is fraud, right?" Grandma looked stunned. Grandpa's jaw tightened. "I thought it seemed strange," he muttered. "Didn't sit right with me, but your mother said you were tired of dealing with legal stuff," she insisted. I folded the paper slowly, my fingers pressing the creases like I was folding something sacred. "We'll make it right," I said. No one spoke after that, not for a long moment. Outside the porch, swing creaked again. The day had fully broken light pouring through the kitchen curtains, and for the first time in a while, I felt grounded, not just in place, but in truth. The rain hadn't let up all morning. It tapped gently on the shed's tin roof, a soft, steady rhythm that made the space feel smaller and more intimate. The wooden floor creaked under our feet as we shifted boxes and tubs. The air filled with the scent of soil dust and the faint sweetness of mildew from a forgotten bag of potting mix. I wore Dad's old hoodie, the navy one, with the faded collar and loose cuffs. The sleeves were too long and the zipper stuck halfway up, but it smelled like home. Sophie sneezed and wiped her nose with her wrist. "You'd think with all this rain the spiders would have cleared out by now." "Spiders are smarter than we are," I said, sliding a box labeled XMAS Lights 2018 out from under a rusted lawnmower. The handwriting stopped me. It was his dad's. I sat back on my heels. "Sophie, look." She came closer. "That's Dad's writing." The box creaked as I opened it, revealing tangled strings of lights, a cracked ornament, and a sealed white envelope taped to the inside flap. In thick, slightly crooked letters it read, "For Mom." I peeled it loose and held it for a moment before carefully opening it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper folded into thirds. If anything happens to me, make sure the girls are safe. Use my savings. Tell them I love them both more than they know. Don't let them carry what I couldn't finish. I read it twice before passing it silently to Sophie. Her eyes filled. He wrote this for her. She never showed us. I nodded. My stomach turned not with rage, but with something more measured. A deeper kind of betrayal, the one you feel when love is used as a curtain. Walter stepped into the doorway holding a small metal file box. Thought this might help. Found it behind the fertilizer bags. Inside were old bank statements tucked into plastic sleeves. I flipped through the pages, heart pounding. Dad's name, account balances, transfer receipts, a small life insurance policy. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something, and it was supposed to be for us. Sophie shook her head. She made it look like there was nothing. She told me we were broke, I said softly, that the funeral costs used up everything. I believed her. Grandpa stood silent for a moment. Then, in a low voice, "You girls need a lawyer." That afternoon, Eleanor made a few calls and gave us the name of someone she trusted, a local estate attorney. She helped my friend Gladys when her cousin tried to rewrite a will, Grandma said. Rebecca Chen, sharp as a tack. We called and got a same-day appointment. Rebecca's office was tucked between a bakery and a dry cleaner in a small commercial strip. She greeted us herself, mid-30s blazer, over a dark turtleneck, sipping a cold brew in one hand while offering her card with the other. Tell me everything, she said, motioning us to sit. Sophie spread out the inheritance waiver, the copy from Grandpa's box. I added the letter from Dad and the banking documents. Rebecca read carefully, lips pursed. Then she looked up. This signature. It's already suspicious. Slant's wrong. Pressure looks traced. The notary listed here. They don't have a current record. I can have it verified. My hands clenched. What does that mean legally? If it's proven forged, she replied, you have both a civil and potentially a criminal case. We could move to recover the estate and potentially file charges for document falsification. Sophie leaned forward. We don't want to ruin her. But this isn't right. Rebecca nodded. You're not here for revenge. You're here for the truth. That matters. We scanned every document, and Rebecca walked us through next steps, filing intent ordering, handwriting analysis, and retrieving Dad's full estate records. By the time we left, the rain had slowed. The sun peeked out for the first time all day, casting golden streaks across the wet pavement. Back home, Sophie curled up in Grandpa's reading chair, with her laptop marking down dates from the statements. I sat at the table, typing out a timeline of everything I could remember. Payments, conversations, the day I signed nothing. We didn't talk much, but something had shifted between us. Sophie wasn't a child being protected. She was a partner now, standing beside me in the quiet work of justice. Just after dinner, my phone buzzed. A new message. Mom, don't do something you'll regret. We're still family. I stared at the screen. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel guilt. I just felt done. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not cold like wind or rain, cold like old paper and echoing footsteps. The walls were beige, the floors a dull gray tile, and the chairs harder than they had any right to be. But I sat up straight. I didn't fidget, didn't cross my arms or shift in my seat. I sat straighter than I ever had in front of her. I used to think I'd crumble in moments like this, but this wasn't about fear anymore. This was about truth. Sophie sat next to me, her folder color-coded each tab a layer of pain she had sorted through. She was wearing a blazer 2 sizes too big, borrowed from Grandma's closet, but she wore it like armor. Rebecca stood before the bench, calm as ever. Her voice was clear, firm, never raised. Your Honor, we are here today to challenge the legitimacy of a document that stripped my clients of their lawful inheritance. A document created under suspicious circumstances without consent and bearing signatures now proven to be forged. The judge, gray-haired, unreadable, nodded slightly, indicating she should continue. Rebecca held up a copy of the waiver agreement. This document submitted by the defendant claims that both Lena and Sophie Morgan willingly waived their rights to their late father's estate. However, handwriting analysis shows both signatures are inconsistent with known samples. Additionally, the notary listed here is no longer a licensed professional. The last known records of their certification expired months before this document is dated. The opposing counsel, a man with silver cufflinks and a rehearsed smile, rose next. Your Honor, the family was under immense emotional distress at the time. While the document may not be perfect, it was executed in good faith based on conversations with the mother who managed the household after her husband's death. Conversations, Rebecca said evenly, are not legal waivers. Then came the witnesses. Sophie was called first. She stepped into the stand with trembling hands but steady eyes. I was 21, she began. Still in college. I trusted my mother. I thought she was looking out for us. I didn't know she'd taken my sister's savings. I didn't know about any document. And when I found out it wasn't just money that felt stolen, it was the life we were supposed to share. She paused, then continued stronger. She used my sister, then erased her, like she was just a paycheck. Karen didn't react. She kept her eyes, low hands folded in her lap. Then it was my turn. I took the stand and looked around at the wooden walls, the judge's expressionless face, the few relatives seated in the gallery, and finally my mother. I was told I said that my job was done, that I didn't need a room in the house anymore. But what was my job exactly? Supporting a family that never saw me as more than a replacement for my father? I paid the bills. I kept the lights on. I stayed quiet. And when it was convenient to forget me, I was forgotten. Rebecca asked gently, Did you ever sign or consent to waive your inheritance? No, I said. Not once. I never saw that document until a few weeks ago. The signature isn't mine. And the fact that it even exists, it's a betrayal I didn't expect even after everything. Karen's attorney declined to cross-examine. The judge asked one question. Do you believe your mother acted with intent to deceive? I looked directly at her then. Her eyes met mine for the briefest moment before flickering away. Yes, I said quietly. I do. Then Karen stood. She wasn't called to testify, but she rose anyway like something in her couldn't stay seated. You don't know what it's like to be alone, she said, her voice cracking. After he died, everything fell on me. I did what I had to do. No one answered. The judge cleared her throat and asked her to be seated. A few more minutes passed. Paperwork exchanged. Legal codes referenced. But the air had already shifted. We all knew where this was going. Finally, the verdict. In the matter of Morgan v. Morgan, the court finds that the waiver document in question is invalid due to lack of verifiable consent and evidence of forgery. The estate of the late Robert Morgan will be reassigned in accordance with Oregon inheritance law. Additionally, the court orders the defendant to repay funds improperly withdrawn from joint accounts. I didn't smile, I didn't cry, I just breathed. Sophie gripped my hand tightly under the table. Karen stood slowly, gathered her purse. She didn't look at us, not once. Her heels clicked softly against the tile as she walked out of the courtroom alone. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had lost something. I felt like I had reclaimed it. The apartment wasn't big. A one-bedroom unit tucked above a small bakery in southeast Portland with thin walls and creaky floors that let you know when the neighbor's dog was pacing. But for once, everything in it belonged to me. There were no boxes marked with someone else's name. No shared shelf where my things got pushed to the back. The couch was second-hand, the table slightly wobbly, and my bed frame squeaked when I rolled over too quickly, but it was mine. Every inch of it. I'd signed the lease in my own name. No cosigner, no backup. I remembered how in high school I used to sign Mom's name on field trip slips when she forgot or didn't bother. I learned early how permission worked in our house, what was allowed, what wasn't, and who got to decide. Now, no one had to approve anything. On Sunday mornings, I opened the windows and let the smell of the bakery downstairs drift in yeast cinnamon butter. It mixed with the scent of coffee brewing in my small kitchen, made the place feel lived in. I bought a plant, then 3 more. They lined the windowsill like quiet green reminders that things could grow again. That weekend, Sophie came over for dinner. She brought groceries, most of which didn't go together, and attempted to make pasta with entirely too much garlic and not enough salt. "It's edible," I said between bites. She grinned. Barely. She looked older now, not tired, just more herself. She was juggling school and a weekend job at a cafe and somehow still found time to memorize therapy flashcards and tell me every detail of her day like she was reporting live from a war zone. Grandpa and Grandma stopped by for brunch the next day. Eleanor brought me a small wrapped box. Inside was Dad's old wristwatch, polished, the strap replaced, still ticking. "He wore this every day until you were 12, she said. "We figured you might like it now." I held it for a long moment. The leather was soft, the face slightly scratched. It looked like something that had survived many things and kept going. "Thank you," I said, trying not to blink too hard. Later that afternoon, after everyone had left, I curled up on the couch with a blanket and my journal. I didn't write much these days, only when it felt necessary. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "For the first time, I am not surviving. I am choosing." It didn't sound dramatic. It just felt true. I heard from a distant aunt that Mom was living in a rented basement unit now. Rick had moved out sometime before Christmas. She was working part-time, mostly alone. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel bitterness. I felt nothing. Just the stillness that comes after you finally set down something you were never meant to carry. Sophie curled up next to me on the couch later that night, a bowl of popcorn in her lap. She nudged my shoulder. "You know," she said, "everything I'm becoming, it's because of you." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her and smiled. There was nothing to fix, nothing to rescue, just two women choosing to be family on their own terms. That night, I watered the plants one by one. The jazz station played softly in the background. The sky outside was pale and full of stars I couldn't quite see from the city, but I knew they were there. I turned off the lights, poured myself a cup of tea, and stood by the window. I wasn't anyone's placeholder anymore. I was mine. The jazz was still playing low as I watered the last plant. There was no applause, no grand moment, just the quiet certainty that I had finally come home to myself. Sometimes healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about choosing not to carry what was never yours to begin with. Family should be where you are seen, not just needed. And love, real love, doesn't ask you to disappear. If this story reminded you of someone, or maybe even of yourself, I'd be honored to hear what stayed with you. You're welcome to share your thoughts below. There's always room here for one more voice.